everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Deep Thoughts. And today we are talking about Fire Force Episode 9, The Spreading Malice. But hey, before we begin though, I do want to give a quick thank you to those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter, namely at FateCaden and at 070157709. Thanks so much for sharing last week's video over on Twitter, you guys, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Fire Force video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's Fire Force video. Now, with that said, we are going to sink our teeth into this week's episode, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and start with this. I'm going to knock this one out of the park, because I've seen this topic come up again and again. I've even mentioned it in my videos. I've seen it repeatedly on Annie Twitter, seen it even in Annie Tube. I've seen this like anywhere Fire Force is discussed, this topic will come up. Let's talk fan service. Okay, now I want to stress something because I'm like, I know some people know this, some people may not, but the people who do know this might use it as ammo against me. Allow me to say, I normally like fan service. I'm not against that. I know some people think like, oh, because he's asexual, he doesn't like fan service. On the contrary, I normally like fan service. One of my favorite shows, just out of sheer stupidity and fan service, is JoJo. And no, I'm not kidding. I love JoJo. I'm also a gigantic Free fan. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. I would be pretty hard pressed to enjoy Free and not enjoy fan service. I was going to say man service, but it's the same thing, just different genders. What I'm trying to say is that sexualizing a character or making a character look hot in a show does not bother me, not in the slightest. What does bother me, and I think the reason why this fan service is brought up so much, is badly placed fan service. I think there is a disconnect between a lot of folks, because I've seen some people really laying into Fire Force saying that it feels like something from a bygone era with its fan service. And some of these folks seem to forget that basically everything has fan service in it. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that Kohaku gets used as fan service every so often, but do you want to know why they don't notice or bring it up? Because it's not used in a weird way. It never feels necessarily out of place, and it's not obstructing the rest of the story. With Fire Force, the disconnect, I think, for a lot of folks, is that they're noticing how blatant the fan service is, because it feels so out of place. It feels so distracting. There are several moments in this episode where a scene either should be intense, or should be even maybe sad, or should be dramatic, and instead we get blatant fan service, and it feels like there's a disconnect between the show, what the show wants to do in a given scene. I've seen this happen not just in terms of fan service, but also in terms of the show's humor. Like, it can't seem to pick a tone and stick to it. And that is a reoccurring problem with the show. It's definitely a problem in this episode. It doesn't ruin the show for me. It didn't ruin this episode for me, but I have noticed this as a pattern in the show. I do hope they fix it. I don't necessarily care if they do or not, though. To me, I'm still enjoying the show. I know for some people, it actually does pull them out of it. For those people, I'm sorry you feel that way. But for me, I'm still enjoying the show, although I do agree with you. I wish they would knock it the hell off. It really ruins some of these characters in a big bad way. Well, I say it ruins these characters, it really just ruins Tamaki, but you know what I meant. See, now that may make it sound like I didn't enjoy this week's episode, and that really couldn't be farther from the truth. I normally enjoy just about every episode of Fire Force. There are occasional moments where I go, ugh, the fan service, or ugh, the humor's out of place. Not that I don't find the humor funny, just that it really kills whatever tone it's going for. It's like when people complain about the humor in a Marvel movie. You know what I mean? Where like the jokes feel like weirdly out of place in some Marvel movies, where you're like, you had tension, and then you felt the need to put a joke in there, and it just shattered whatever tension you had. That is here. I will admit that's here. But if the reason you come to Fire Force is the same as mine, namely the action, then you're going to be pleasantly surprised this week, because there is some really stellar action. And not to mention, the characters are still fun, outside of Tamaki. Shinra is still a fun character. Rekka is amazingly fun to watch on screen. I do wish we saw a little bit more with Karim, who I was wrong in pronouncing I was incorrect with the pronunciation last week. I think I called him Kareem. Apparently it's pronounced Karim, according to this week's episode. I do want a little bit more fleshing out of these characters. I've been saying that I want to like these characters, but I think they've been doing a pretty decent job thus far. That said, I do come to the show mainly for the action at this point. I think its action is its selling point. The stuff that the way that these folks animate fire is straight fire. So I immediately hate myself. Take, for example, the fight with Shinra versus Rekka. Now, this was not as one-sided of a fight as I thought it was going to be, and the animation here is stellar. Big shout out to the animators who worked on this week's episode, in particular this week's fight between Shinra and Rekka. Now, I wish I could read kanji because I always want to shout out animators and I want to get to know which animator worked on which thing, right? Like, I really want to get better on that because I feel like, you know, I need to learn how to read kanji. I need to be able to pinpoint who is animating what. Although I don't think I'll ever be on that anime AJ status, but you know, it's something I want to improve on in these videos. And from what I gather, the two people who seemed to work on the shots that I was most intrigued by were Kazuhiro Miwa and Riki Matsura. Now, Matsura's work I'm not terribly familiar with, and I couldn't find them over on Mal, but Kazuhiro Miwa's I am. Most notably, Miwa worked on the first opening to My Hero Academia, which I am super familiar with. So I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I wish I could shout out the praise of everybody who worked on this week's fight because it is stellar, but unfortunately I just don't know everybody's names. I wish I was better at that. And the fight itself, as I said, is not quite as one-sided as I had assumed it was going to be. With Shinra versus Rekka, it's like I assumed that Rekka was going to, well, wreck Shinra, but honestly, it was pretty decently matched. Rekka had experience and strength, for sure, but Shinra had technique and speed. He was a lot more clever with the way that he used his pyrokinesis, whereas Rekka just wanted to, well, wreck everything. As Karim pointed out earlier, he really is hot-headed, and it's basically his downfall in this week's episode. I do want to talk a little bit about Rekka, though, because the flashbacks seem to show him as a totally different guy. Whether or not he was always insane is something that Karim actually asks during the episode by the end, where he's not even sure if his friend was always his friend, or if he, like, was his friend and then turned insane. And it does seem like he was brainwashed by some sort of cult or religion. Like, the man just kept screaming about the evangelist and turning the earth into a sun, into a star. I guess by using infernals and just setting the world ablaze, he whoever it is plans on turning the earth into a star. Now, I'm not the best at science. I didn't really take too much science in school, but I'm pretty sure fire doesn't work that way. I don't think you can turn the planet into a star by setting everything on fire, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But either way, Rekka was interesting to me. I wanted to know more about Rekka, as he did seem like a genuinely good person. Like I said a couple episodes back, I didn't sense any malice within him, but I guess the malice spread right through him, hence the title of the episode, because he seemingly had no remorse over what he did. And I really wish we saw more of this character, but at the same time, I was shocked that they had the gall to actually take this character out. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about that, because the aftermath of the fight was intense, like, in fact, brutal even. I was genuinely shocked by these Templar-looking folks who just straight up killed Rekka while he was on ice, and even took out Hua Yan's arm. I believe that's that character's name. Straight up, like, attempted to kill Karim and in the process cut this man's arm clean off, which was a shock to say the least. And they were probably willing to kill everybody in that building, including the kids. Like, these people are, ironically enough, Templars. Like, they are devoted to the cause, and they don't give a damn about anything that comes in between, which I guess would make our group the Assassins. Are they the Assassin's Creed? Okay, sorry, I won't go there, but it's interesting. It made me realize just how deep the Infernals conspiracy goes. It's a winding tunnel of insanity, and they're in a lot more trouble than I thought they were. And it does look like the first was infiltrated as opposed to in on the whole thing. I don't think everybody at the first is in on it. I think it was just Rekka being insane, and maybe the chief knows something that he's not telling, but I really don't think Hua Yan or Karim actually knew anything. I genuinely think that those two just were not clued in. But yeah, the aftermath was intense and shocked the hell out of me. I really have to give them kudos. I did not see that coming at all. As for how the episode wrapped up, it does sort of end, I don't say abruptly, but just kind of like, I'm like, oh, all right, I guess. Like, Karim seemed more disappointed than distraught that his friend was not only evil, but murdered by some secret cult that he is not aware of. But I mean, like, and he does agree to join Shinra, which is like kind of cool. I don't think he's like joining the 8th or anything. No, that's Tamaki, but we'll get to that later. But it's I don't know, I was kind of shocked by how quickly he was just like, I'm gonna figure out what happened with Rekka, but I'll join you. I'll join you, but I'm gonna still work at the 1st. But I'm gonna help you figure out what's going on. I was like, oh, all right. I figured you'd be more upset about everything. Okay, and it was just very strange. And I do gotta say, Shinra talking about the 8th as home was very sweet, and they do make the 8th look very comfy in that end credit scene. But the only thing that bugged me was that the Tamaki fan service yet again, but also the fact that Arthur is apparently missing in the aftermath of the fight with Rekka, since he never actually made it to the fight with Rekka, and nobody seems to really care. Like, they put out a search for him, but that was it. We see everybody hanging out at the 8th. Nobody that we know was looking for him. And Arthur's shown at the end walking around like it's like Fist of the North Star. And that's the last shot of the episode, and I'm just like, oh, okay. But yeah, everybody, those are basically all my thoughts. I hope it doesn't sound like I didn't like the episode, because I did. It's just I had like weird questions where I'm like, why would we do this? Like, why so much fan service? Why so many weird jokes? The rushed pace at the end, like, it's just, what? I don't know. But overall, though, the fight was great. Rekka was fascinating to watch on screen, and the whole Templars aspect, like the secret cult of whoever it was, the evangelist, it's got me intrigued, man, and I did not see that ending coming at all. So overall, I would be happy to give this week's episode a rank of B. I thought it was pretty solid. But hey, before we go, everybody, as always, I have to give a big shout out to the good folks over on Patreon, namely those in the Earl Grey tier: Calvin Atkinson, Crowbar of Irony, Dominic, Urza, Ginkotaku, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Mirth Mouser, Nye, Omnigaramond, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Steven, Tristan, and Verdon. Thanks so much for your continued support over on Patreon, you guys, and if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then by all means go ahead and check out the first link in the description. Check out our Patreon page and see all the cool rewards you can get over there, as well as access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. But on that note, everybody, that is going to be a video, so if you enjoyed today's video, then you've probably been on the internet long enough to know what to do already, so I ain't going to tell you, but I will say that it is appreciated, and if you're feeling stressed out today, you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.